Ms. Mariam Jaafar.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the motion, standing in the name of the Minister of Finance. In this speech, I would like to focus on two sectors that have drawn some measure of unhappiness, and which the Honourable Member, Mr. Leong Man Wai, is quite fond of bringing up: financial services and technology ICT. I think we can safely assume that these are sectors in which he would like to see an urgent rebalancing of the foreign PMET population, as well as a review of the provisions in SICA. At this point, I would like to declare my interests as a managing director and partner of a management consulting firm. I do a good portion of my consulting work with banks and tech companies, and I want to share some perspectives on just how important getting the right balance in this debate around the foreign talent policy is to our competitiveness in these two sectors. These are both people businesses that lend themselves to being natural hubs. Our strategy has been very clear. These sectors do not exist merely to provide services to our domestic market. Our strategy has been and must unequivocally remain to be a regional and global hub. And we have done very well. In the financial sector, we have banks of every color: local banks, regional banks, MNC banks. Today, Chinese banks are actively entering the market. The fintech sector has been growing, and we are seeing the birth of the first digital banks. Wealth management continues to grow strongly, with family offices flocking here, on whose heels highly sophisticated legal practices are also coming. So many PMET jobs have been created for locals and foreigners within the sector and in adjacent sectors. Jobs that a lot of Singaporeans want, not only for the good pay, but also for an MNC work environment that is seen to be more progressive, dynamic, and diverse. Today, we are without a doubt the place to be for financial services in Asia. It is a status that only a few global cities can claim, and it's a status that we cannot take for granted. While more recently forged, our status as a tech hub is growing by the day, with the FANG companies or the global tech giants ramping up their Asian headquarters here. The Chinese tech giants have also come, the ByteDances, the Alibabas, the Ping Ans, the Tencents. They bring with them high-paying jobs, stock options, and a startup culture that attracts some of our brightest young Singaporeans. We have unicorns like Shopee, and we are also seeing more and more early-stage startups or pre-unicorns. There is also a growing phenomenon of founding teams that comprise of both Singaporeans and foreigners. And that diversity is fueling innovation and entrepreneurship. Both these sectors are important growth sectors for Singapore. MNCs come for many reasons: our attractive tax laws, our business infrastructure, our skilled workforce, and yes, our open foreign talent policy. They do not come only because of our foreign talent policy, but they will not come if we curtail the flow of talent so much that they no longer feel they have access to a global talent pool. Because they play a global game, and a global game requires a global talent pool. Global talent may also not come if they hear from the peers that they won't feel welcome. As the government has explained many times, it is our choice to play this global game, to be a financial hub, to be a technology hub. It explains why we have a lot of foreigners in these sectors, and in particular, a higher concentration of Indian nationals. Not SICA, no other FTAs. Mr. Speaker, if I may use an analogy of something I love, and I know many others do too: football, and in particular, Liverpool Football Club.
Thank you.
The English Premier League has undoubtedly become the most successful football league in the world. The EPL doesn't exist to bring Britons their weekly fix of soccer. The EPL has legions of fans around the world. For 2 of the past 3 seasons, the Champions League final has been an all-England affair. For Sunday's match versus Leeds, the Liverpool starting 11 comprised of 9 nationalities, with only 2 Englishmen. But if you want to compete in the Champions League, you need the Messis, the Cristiano Ronaldos, and the Mo Salahs. They not only complement the homegrown talent, they improve them. Local boy Trent Alexander-Arnold would not be as good a right back as he is today if he wasn't pinging in crosses every day to the likes of Mo Salah and Sadio Mane, without Alisson and Van Dijk yelling instructions to the back four. This openness to talent has allowed Liverpool to bring pure joy to their fans around the world. It allows Liverpool kids to grow up dreaming of being the next Trent Alexander-Arnold or Curtis Jones, both academy lads. It also means that many local lads and academy players never break into the senior team. Just think of Harry Wilson, the 2017-18 Academy Player of the Year, who recently joined Fulham, unable to break the front three of Salah, Mane, and Firmino. They have to ply their trade elsewhere. But with the foundation of a club like Liverpool, it is a soft landing. They can still make a great career for themselves. Just think of Conor Cody, who now enjoys an important role at Wolves, and even earned a call-up to the national team for Euro 2020. Or the tireless James Milner, whose minutes get less as he pushes the old age of 36. But only a fool would question his importance to the team, on and off the pitch, for his versatility, his experience, and his leadership, to talk to the younger players, or in Klopp's words, I quote, to do his kind of little bit dirty dressing room talks that I cannot do, the things you say in the dressing room that I am not allowed to say in public. That's the last kick, and that's nice. I, for one, would not object if the rumors of a future role in management in Klopp's team were to come true. And which Liverpool fan can forget when we welcome God, or Robbie Fowler to the rest of you, back to heaven, where Rafa brought him back from Anfield as a backup striker to Owen and Heskey. Mr. Speaker, we cannot deny the fruits of a foreign talent policy have not been equally shared by all. It has made things more competitive for our PMETs, and MPs from both sides of the House have talked about the anxieties felt by Singaporeans. I have spoken to residents, many in the 40s and 50s, who were retrenched and have yet to find a new job, despite sending out many CVs and making efforts to tap on various reskilling programs. I have spoken to residents who feel they have been displaced because there was a foreigner willing to work for a lower pay. I have spoken to residents who see the new expat manager is always followed by more of his countrymen. And I have spoken to residents who have felt discriminated against at work, passed up for promotions and the plum assignments. I have spoken to residents who question whether their foreign colleagues really have the qualifications claimed. I have spoken to graduates of our tertiary institutions who find that they can't land the sexier jobs in ICT, which seem to demand experience that they think should only be expected of people with a few years of experience, not a fresh graduate. And I've spoken to residents in their 30s and 50s who have jobs, but are feeling anxious about which side they will be on in the next round of headcount cuts, or just feel a little stuck. And I empathize. I do not doubt that some of these grievances are real. That is the reason why we have FCF and TAFEP. And so I was happy to hear of the commitment to ensuring that Singaporeans always get a fair chance, including measures to enshrine TAFEP in legislation in PM's National Day rally speech. The government must be firm in enforcing this. It also makes sense to increase the EP and S-Pass salary criteria because Singaporeans today are different from 20 or 5 years ago. We are more educated, more skilled. We have more Singaporeans that can do these jobs, and companies must recognize that. But it is dangerous to generalize and falsely characterize these issues as more pervasive than they are, just to stoke emotions. It is dangerous to believe that if we just had fewer foreigners, all the problems would be solved and Singaporeans would get all jobs, because there are other issues at play. It is dangerous to believe that if we tell our banks and tech firms that we will not approve most of their EP applications and renewals, as I seem to hear the PSP say, that they have to get rid of the foreign talents they already have to meet some concentration ratios, that the hard-earned status of being a global financial and tech hub will not be eroded. It is dangerous to believe that it is okay to lose this status because we have so many things to fall back on, because we don't. And that is why I cannot accept, is why I must reject the motion standing in the name of Mr. Leong Man Wai. Mr. Speaker, the reality is in both these sectors, we have more jobs than talent. The war for talent is not hyperbole. Talk to people in the industry and they will tell you how tight the labor market is, how hard it is to fill many of the roles. Indeed, as it has become more difficult to bring in new people, I have heard that people already in the market are able to jump to another opening, almost always with a minimum salary bump of 20 to 30%, and often also with a jump in role. And part of the reason it is so hard to find people is that technology is changing so rapidly and the depth of domain knowledge or specific technical skills are not yet readily available. We simply do not have enough Singaporeans with these skills. In ICT, we now have lots of well-trained IT project managers, but for roles like back-end developers, data scientists, often when they put up applications from these roles, many of the Singaporean CVs they receive check off perhaps 1 or 2 of the 5 to 6 skills involved. And for those who check off more boxes, the competition for those who have all those skills is intense. From the tech giants, from the Chinese firms, even from GovTech, where I have to declare I'm on the board. Or compliance in banking. We have a lot of Singaporeans in compliance, but for some, their knowledge is limited to traditional compliance frameworks, while globally banks are adopting smart compliance, which is much more agile and aligned to business objectives, and they don't yet have that experience. At the leadership level, we still hear that it is still difficult to find enough Singaporeans with the leadership, communication, change management, and influencing skills needed to lead in the complex multi-stakeholder environment common in most MNC organizations. The reason often cited is that many Singaporeans lack international work and management experience. Minister Lawrence Wong and Minister Tan See Leng have shared the changes that have been made over time to our foreign talent policy and guidelines on employment practices. These have been necessary and timely, and the impact is being felt. My banking contacts have shared that getting an EP now takes much longer. EPs that used to get approved in days now take months, even for senior jobs. But again, does that mean the role will go to Singaporeans? The reality is global banks are unlikely to settle because their own competition is so intense and the pressure to deliver outcomes so strong. So if getting an EP takes longer and is more uncertain, if they don't see the skill sets immediately available in the local market, they choose to wait, or they build in flexibility for themselves, such as by parking the staff in London, New York, Hong Kong, or Dubai, temporarily, but potentially permanently. A senior bank HR executive shared that while she is supportive of the move to increase EP salary criteria, if new restrictions go too far, it will force them to reopen their location strategies. When COVID has changed the world, by now MNCs have gotten good at working in remote teams. It is not inconceivable that banks move some tech and ops roles to India or even Poland and Russia. And indeed, it is already happening, taking along with them jobs held by Singaporeans in those teams. Tech managers echo these sentiments. I could try and settle on a lower quality candidate, but that really doesn't sit well with me. I can wait several months, but that doesn't really work in business. Or I can move the role elsewhere. None of these are great options I really want to do. I hope to not be put in a difficult position of making these kinds of trade-offs between quality, time, and location, says a hiring manager in tech. At the same time, many bank and tech companies are heeding the government's call to invest in the Singaporean core. At an MNC bank, at the entry level, the directive is now to hire exclusively Singaporean fresh grads and PMEDs who have gone through professional conversion programs. At the next level, where the jobs require more specialized technical skills, there is a mix of Singaporeans and foreigners, and they're trying different things to increase the proportion of Singaporeans. They had tried getting hiring managers to carve out time to develop their local talent, but it didn't really work. Perhaps an ask too big for busy hiring managers. But they're now looking to start a scheme where local talents can shadow or do projects with the hiring manager 1 or 2 days a week. And for even more senior roles, they are pushing to give internal Singaporean candidates more opportunities. And at all levels, screening and interviewing practices have been updated to encourage more diversity and Singaporean representation. For example, at least 3 parties, including HR, interview every candidate to address the perception that some foreign hiring managers tend to favor people from their own countries. Hiring managers are also asked to consider internal Singapore applicants first, before internal EPs, before external Singaporean hires, and then only external foreign hires, in that order. Similarly, in the tech sector, companies like Google are very deliberate in making sure that locals are represented in the screening and interviewing process, and have also created traineeships under schemes like SG United. Google has made a few hires from this program and has contributed more trained talent to their ecosystem. And all these are initiatives that take effort, but they do them. Mr. Speaker, at this point, I do want to give a voice to Singaporeans in these sectors who are perhaps heard not as often about. Like my friend, Ms. M, who joined one of the tech giants when they ramped up their regional operations here. She said, I quote, "I love what I do, and I enjoy working with the diversity of colleagues. If Singapore were not open and Company X hadn't come here, I would never have had the opportunity to work for this great company." Another friend, who is in one of the digital banks, said, "I get to be involved in creating a new business model. I'm learning every day." Meanwhile, a former colleague who joined one of the unicorns has recently embarked on an exciting adventure to head up their operations as they take bold steps to expand in Brazil. These positive feelings persist even when there are disappointments. Ms. L shared with me how she had applied for the position of country manager, which eventually went to a foreigner. I could feel like it was an opportunity taken from me, but you know what? I report to him now, and I have learned a lot from him. I don't begrudge him that role at all, because I recognize him as a world-class talent. So I learn from him, and maybe one day I'll get my shot. These are intensely personal stories, but they are real Singaporeans too. And how can we deny these Singaporeans the opportunity to live their dreams? The PSP talks about rebalancing the foreign labor force. Based on the list of concrete proposals of how they seek to achieve that, I can only observe that they seem to be fixated on achieving this rebalancing by taking unilateral actions to reduce the number of foreigners as quickly as possible, as if that is the only way it can be done. It is as if the PSV has no faith in Singaporeans to get there on our own merit without risking our global hub proposition. I beg to differ. We Singaporeans are much more adaptable and resilient than that. So yes, let's tighten up where we can. Let's ferret out instances of discrimination because there's really no place for this. But I say the best way to rebalance is to keep investing in Singaporeans until we are globally competitive. And the government has made significant investments in the Singaporean core. The number of training and reskilling programs for the unemployed has been impressive. It's still too early to tell what the overall outcomes will be, but we have some reason to be optimistic. In one of the mid-career reskilling programs I'm familiar with, 40% of the trainees landed the job within a couple of weeks of graduation. We all know mid-career PMs who have taken courses and not landed a job. But let us not forget to celebrate those who have, and let us keep working on it. Reskilling is also relevant to 2 other groups of Singaporeans. First, Singaporeans who have jobs but are at risk, either due to sunsetting sectors or their individual skill sets. And 2, our graduates. In my maiden speech, I called on companies to take accountability for their employees' learning. In many organizations, learning and development is still not top of mind. And too often, conversations about skills are associated with performance management rather than professional development. Employers sometimes say that it's difficult to get their employees to go for reskilling, even though failure to reskill will ultimately cost them their current jobs and their future prospects. As for tertiary graduates, more can be done to equip them with industry-relevant skills, knowledge, and tools. Now, you may see this as an indictment of our tertiary institutions, but that's not entirely fair. It is difficult for professors and curriculums to keep up with the pace at which industry is moving, specifically when it comes to specific tools that are used only in industry. When companies recruit for back-end engineers, they look not only for knowledge of back-end programming languages, but also knowledge of popular frameworks like the Spring Framework, Spring Security, or Django used in the industry. According to the CEO of a startup which uses big data to understand skills, few young Singaporean graduates have these on their CV. Interestingly enough, Many young graduates in India and Jakarta do, not through their university courses, but through boot camps and external short courses they attend. We don't quite have this culture here yet. It's easy to say Singaporeans are too sheltered, passive, complacent, but I submit it is in fact often because they lack awareness and understanding of where and how to start, especially if there are frictions that make it difficult to, such as family commitments or side gigs to augment family incomes.
Ms. Mariam, if you can wrap up, please.
We can do more, the government, employers. We need to empower Singaporeans to take ownership of their own reskilling and career development by first giving them the tools to understand where their skills stand versus their peers, where their skills or lack thereof are at risk, and then what they can do to start their reskilling journey or nudge them on the jobs they can put their hands up for. Tertiary institutions can work with industry to curate these courses and boot camps and guide their students on which ones to take for the jobs they want. And the Singaporeans must put our hands up. Don't just complain that company job postings or internal job portals are just for show, even if it may be true in some cases. Know the skills, get the skills, send in the application showing the skills, and then companies, MOM will make sure that companies cannot ignore you. To do this, much more granularity is needed on skills required for each job.
You do need to wrap up.
Okay. This granularity will allow MOM to be more circumspect and discerning when employees come claiming that they cannot find any Singaporeans with the skills, and to ensure that reskilling programs supported by public funds will have a better track record of outplacement. So there are a number of proposals I do have, including extending skills future credits to our tertiary students below 25, supporting longer-term reskilling and professional development programs than the current 6 to 12-month traineeships, especially for the sandwich class, and removing frictions for Singaporeans to take on overseas posting.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister articulated clearly the need for us to remain open while investing in the Singaporean core. This motion proposed by the Minister of Finance reiterates this. It's critical we get this balance right, and notwithstanding my suggestions in the speech, I support the motion. Thank you.